goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Elaine Woolscroft.
This is normally part of the show where I say something like snarky or stupid, but we're redoing the opening for audio reasons. So I feel I don't want to force it and do it. Then you guys would have to like fake it.
Wow,
I already did it. So.
You know,
I just assumed you'd think of something else that was madcap and crazy, and we would just go along on that ride.
You know, I feel that would have been forcing it. So
yeah, I mean, you're kind of giving a peek behind the curtain on that one, like
breaking that damn
wait a minute,
fourth
you
wall.
mean we're not like a one-shot Chuck here? Like we don't automatically get it on the first go?
Guys,
Listen.
sometimes we're a two-pump chump.
Listen, so rarely does this happen, though. We are normally flawless.
Well, it's just
you.
You know what? Here's the thing. It's just a matter of like, I don't want us to go deep into the episode and then come back later because I'm the one who usually does the editing and go, oh, fuck, we should have thrown a goddamn windscreen on that or something like that.
Speaking of in deep, Harvey went. No, we're not getting to the news stories yet.
No,
not yet. We're on episode 92.
Episode 92. We're going to be talking about Hollywood films that press on when deaths occur during filming.
We're entering the world of the macabre.
Amid production death, I think it's really fascinating. Maybe that just means I'm kind of morbid, but
I won't hold that against you.
I appreciate that, but the question really becomes like, when someone dies, like, now what?
Oh,
John has the Hollywood Book of Death.
Really? Yes. The Necronomicon of the Stars.
Ooh, very nice.
I was like, might as well bring this one out. It's right next to my Hollywood Book of Scandals. Actually.
He has like a ton of crazy Hollywood books. Oh yeah, like tons of them.
Wow.
But so that's gonna be the episode today. But we have some cool things going on. So
some news bits.
Yeah. So today the Oscars are gonna be going on tonight in just a few hours. I'm pretty sure that everyone's getting into their Spanx now.
Well, what?
Spanx?
Oh, you mean the celebrities?
Yeah, the celebrities.
I thought you meant like the people watching.
No.
They're Spanx?
Do you guys like to wear Spanx when you watch the Oscars?
What is a Spanx?
That's when
it's
just
like
suck it
that
in.
prison for like your fat.
Oh,
when you put it on, like sometimes it goes down your
Brian,
leg.
you haven't done much theater, have you?
No, I went dirty. Get it into their Spanx.
Oh, that was kind of like spanking, like
spanking,
sexy, like
sexy spank.
Harvey Weinstein.
Brian, you're such a dirty boy.
Yeah, no.
Lane, before we get into all that serialness, because there's a bit of a intensity to that.
Of course.
We're gonna make it funny, obviously, but just real quickly, I want to talk about the Razzie results.
Whoa,
oh, yeah, this is explosive.
Who won?
I don't even remember what I fucking said last episode.
Well, guys, starting from the top, we were all right about the Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
No, I think I said the Mummy. I can't lie.
You said the Mummy.
Oh,
I did.
Right,
I said
Lane.
the Mummy. Yeah,
you
so
were,
I
you were
didn't win.
divergent.
I didn't win. It's okay.
You were divergent. Seriously,
I accept this in my life.
The director for Emoji Movie won as well, which
come on,
that's cheating.
You can't even direct that kind of movie.
Aronofsky should have won that.
Yeah,
we were all
that movie was
across
so
the board
bad.
with Darren Aronofsky, but I guess we were wrong on that one. Lane, Brian, good job. You guys got Tom Cruise. I was wrong.
You can't beat the Running Man.
Can't beat the Cruise.
I really thought it was gonna be Mark Wahlberg. I'm a dad.
No, the problem is that Hollywood doesn't know that Mark Wahlberg's a bad actor.
I'm a cool dad.
I'm a scientist.
I'm a scientist who might be involved with a steroid ring. Did you hear about that?
No.
Oh, yeah. He might have been a customer of a health company that has been roped in with WWE and a bunch of other stars.
Roman
like
Reigns.
Josh Hamel is one
Roman
person.
Reigns is one of them.
Yeah, Roman Reigns is one of them.
What?
And so is Mark Wahlberg. It's basically a bunch of these customers of it was supposed to be like a kind of like a multivitamin
Like
type
a
company.
supplement.
Happy
Like a
Coffee
supplement,
cocktail company.
but it's really been a steroid ring.
What?
Yeah.
And like, would the customers have known this willingly getting into it, or?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, it's human growth hormone. There's a difference.
Yeah.
But
All right, what else you got next?
one time in the park, I beat up a gay man for being gay, nearly to death.
And everyone seems to have forgotten.
This is 2 weeks in a row I've talked about this. No one seems to care. Yeah, we're supporting actor. I got this one, Mel Gibson.
Yeah, man. You
really?
got
Yeah.
this one. Yeah, you nailed it.
I really thought it was going to... I must have had too high of a grade for this sort of thing, because I had Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, you thought that was going to be him. And then who did I have? I had somebody who was also nominated for 2 things.
Well, and we kind of put that one on you. There it is.
I literally don't remember what I said. I'm the worst.
Yeah, I apparently thought Daddy's Home 2 was going to sweep it this We're supporting actors. Good job, Brian. Kim Basinger.
Basinger. How the fuck did you guess that one? Good.
The way I saw it
Basinger.
was kind of the Sharon Stone, kind of the Sharon Stone effect.
Okay,
you know how
okay.
Sharon Stone, when she was starting to go downhill, she started doing like Basic Instinct 2 and was like, yeah, I'm a sexy MILF. I'll just do all the sexy things. And I just figured with
Michelle
Kim...
Pfeiffer style.
No, Michelle Pfeiffer still got it.
But yeah, she's a sexy
Oh
milf.
my god.
She still got
Well,
it.
see, like
Someone's going to go home and spank it at Catwoman.
The difference is between
She's
whether you
still got
call
it.
yourself a sexy MILF or not. Like,
Nah, she's still got
Pfeiffer
it.
doesn't call herself a sexy MILF, and she's still okay then.
No, she's
Do you
still
have to
good.
reach a certain age, or is it just if you have kids? Like Scarlett Johansson now has kids, but she's not like a MILF. She's still a young
She'd be
woman.
a soccer mom.
Well, like
A soccer mom you want to fuck?
It's
Yes.
literally a mom
So-
you want to fuck. So I mean, like, if you're a mom, then you qualify. Like, you're in the club.
But that's smooth. You can't really say.
It's the Scandinavian version of MILF.
Where you go? I get me
Hey man, you guys see the smooth roofs over there? Ooh.
But no, I just figured with Kim Basinger, she was someone who was really kind of like a well-known actress who had done, most of her movies were unfortunately based around how she looked.
Yeah,
Like L.A. Confidential was how she looks.
bada bing.
Hey, she won an Oscar.
She won an Oscar for it, but I mean, it's not the deepest role.
What a shitty year for movies that was 97.
97.
Guys,
But
we're
I just
getting
figured she
wildly
just got to
divergent.
that point where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to do this 50 Shades Freed movie.
Oh my god.
Because why not?
Because I want a summer house.
The
There you
only
go.
thing good about those movies is that they're now over. What a
Yeah.
fucking bunch of
All right.
garbage.
So what else you got?
Oh, and they, speaking of 50 Shades, that won the worst remake, reboot,
Oh,
Sequel
yeah, I had that.
worst screenplay was the Emoji Movie. And this one makes me so happy.
Oh, man.
I can't remember even what I had for
I
that
had
one.
The Mummy.
The Mummy.
Yeah, I think I did
Yeah.
too.
And this one makes me so happy. Worst actress was Tyler Perry, which I nailed.
Yeah, your predictions were
No, I had
spot on.
Dakota Johnson for that.
Oh god, she's so bad.
So between the three of us, we got every category right. Just not one of us got everything right.
The show won. We
Yeah.
won at the end
We
of the
won.
day.
We won.
Perfect.
So let us know how your picks were. Like, I'm going to say
yeah.
that.
Like,
I-
tweet us and talk to us about the Razzies.
Yeah, tweet
man.
us to let us know. Were you disappointed by the Razzies? Contact us on Facebook.
Yeah,
Psycho Show.
check it out.
Well, speaking of unwanted sucking, Elaine, you have some information about Harvey Weinstein, right?
Yeah, well, I thought it'd be nice, because we're doing the Oscars. We'll talk about the Oscar results in another episode, but they are tonight.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, just as a clarification for next week's episode, we're not just going to be talking about the broadcast. We will be kind of summarizing that, but we're also going to be talking about really the movies that were up for Best Picture and things like that. And just
Yeah, because John saw everything. Because he's amazing.
I saw 2.5 of the best movies.
Don't say that on the air.
I just
But
did.
yeah,
It's
we'll
fine.
We'll be summarizing, the movies
yeah,
that
we'll have
were
seen a
up
lot
for
of things,
awards and
so we
like that.
can talk
Sorry.
about it. But yeah, but I thought since the Oscars are actually today and we'll be talking about them later, I just thought it was interesting that it seems like the Time's Up movement has kind of shaped the way that the Oscars are being presented this year because they've ignored a lot of things in the past of allegations and whatnot, but the most interesting thing that I thought that came out just a couple of days ago, and the reports that I found were kind of unclear as to the reinstallation of this piece, but there is some street art that is hopefully going to greet Oscar goers as they head to the Academy Awards. It's a piece by street artist Plastic Jesus in collaboration with an artist named Joshua Ginger Monroe. Now, Monroe was the designer of those nude Donald Trump statues that were around in the cities in 2016. That was him. That was this
That's fine
Joshua
art
Ginger
right there.
Monroe guy.
So maybe one of these guys is Banksy, isn't he?
Yeah, well, and then street artist Plastic Jesus. Now, these two collaborated on a piece. It's a life-size statue of Harvey Weinstein in like a bloused open robe holding an Oscar on the Oscar couch.
Wow.
Or on the
Casting
red couch. And it's called Casting Couch. And it's something that's going to be confronting, people as they come in and, come around the corner, to the theater. Because the Kodak is where the Oscars are held every year. And it's quite close to there, apparently.
Oh, how the heavy have fallen.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, because it's a protest piece, clearly. And I think that this is the time of year when, like, we need to be making sure that we are still striving for change. We're still holding Hollywood accountable, like they're, and don't get me wrong. I mean, every year, like, I tune in at like 5 with a glass of wine and I start watching the red carpet because it's just fun. Like it's the one ritual I have during the year. I mean, it's kind of like my Super Bowl. Like I get excited all day for it, so I want to make sure that we are holding Hollywood accountable for its actions. So one of the things I think that is moving in that direction, John, you were saying that there's going to be a change in the presenter lineup today.
Yeah. It's okay. I don't know. It's going to probably happen. Whatever. It's okay.
Is that your best Casey Affleck?
It's actually not bad.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's all right.
All right. Well, tell us what's going on.
So tell me about your brother.
Yeah, Ben's all right. But all right, that's enough of that. Every year with the Oscars, it wasn't always the case, but I'd say about the last like 20 years or so, the person that wins Best Actor presents Best Actress Award, and one person wins Best Actress Award presents Best Actor Award. They just kind of flip the gender thing each year. And because of all the allegations on Casey Affleck being a sexual sadist pervert, they decided to not have him present Best Actress, for a variety of reasons. Yeah, I mean, the idea of not inviting him anyways, but especially if he's going to be presenting an award for outstanding work for a female. So they are replacing him with Jennifer Lawrence and
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster,
right?
yeah, Jodie Foster. Thank you. I just drew a blank right there.
Well, I think that's a great choice, because we are in this new era, hopefully, of continued accountability. I mean, if you guys remember last year, Brie Larson was the one that presented Casey with his Oscar, and she didn't clap. I mean, she barely handed it to him. She didn't even look at him. And she just went to the back of the stage and she did not applaud. I mean, she made a huge statement last year. I'd like to think that part of that, is a part of the reason why they changed things up this year. Brie Larson's been a huge advocate for women's rights, and for advocacy all over the world. And I think that it's a huge step in the right direction to change this. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, like the Oscars are this protected entity that no matter what goes wrong, like they don't seem to change the formula that much.
Yeah, and just as a side note, Emma Stone will not be presenting Best Actor, but I think that she might be working on like a movie or something. It has nothing to do with anything, right. But that's going to be Helen Mirren and Jane Fonda.
Oh, that's nice. I love Helen Mirren.
Yeah, the reason obviously that I bring that up is because they didn't replace her. I think, which is interesting, with a man. They replaced her with a few more women just to once again get women more involved in a system that doesn't have usually a single woman nominated for Best Director, although they do have the director for.
Hey, we got our first cinematographer nomination this year in the year 2018. So
I guess for me, like it's great to see this, but I also I follow Rose McGowan on Twitter and see what she's going on with the news, and I'm kind of in agreement with her stance on the whole Time's Up movement, which is very much. It's too late in her mind, mainly because she sees a lot of the same people who turned a blind eye to this sort of stuff.
Sure.
Now staying up saying, oh yeah, we're all for it.
But so nothing should be done?
No, that's not it. She's just saying you're putting all this stuff on Harvey Weinstein, which is absolutely warranted, but you're not addressing, why did it have to wait this long? Like, I'll be honest with you. The Casey Affleck thing, it's only now an issue now because of Harvey Weinstein. Mm-hmm. This wasn't anything new. We knew about Casey Affleck.
We knew when he fucking won.
We knew what he did.
When he was given his Oscar,
the Academy didn't give a shit. They didn't give a shit at all.
Of course.
And now it's like, well, we can't ignore it now, so I guess we have to do it. So like that's, I think, the mentality that Rose McGowan is having.
And I don't blame her for that.
I agree with her completely. I do see that there is a bit of almost a co-opting of the rage that maybe isn't quite genuine. Maybe it's more like, well, we have to do it now.
Yeah, well, too. I mean, like, I think it's another way for Hollywood to just congratulate itself on like how conscious they are of social issues. I mean, but at the same time, it's horrible hypocrisy. I mean, the Time's Up movement, I think in itself is kind of flawed because it's, you know, like all these celebrities have bought themselves their little pins and they wear their little pins on social media.
And that's,
you know,
that's why I'm kind of, I'm a little bit skeptical
sure
of any change that will happen.
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, you just think about how gross celebrities can be. I mean, you know, you have Justin Timberlake who's wearing his Time's Up pin and like all he does in his music is degrade and objectify
my
women.
Absolute
you know?
my absolute favorite, and it was James Franco. James Franco
vomit. Yes.
at the what was it, the SAG Awards?
No, I think it was the Golden Globes.
It was Golden Globes
when he won.
He's
right?
wearing his Time's Up pin.
Yup. And he
wins.
Yup.
And he's all about all that stuff. And then literally a day later, the allegations against him come out.
I thought the allegations had
They were
already
already
been out by the
out.
Globes.
Were they already
I think
out?
they had been.
I don't think
Everybody
they were.
kind of ignored him. Though.
Yeah, well, because he like mouth raped a bunch of his students at his stupid acting school.
Well, he also was hitting on some, you know, for lack of a better term, civilian on Twitter. And she was
like non-actress.
She was like, I'm 16, and he kind of doubled down on his perverseness because he wanted to fuck her even more when he found out she was 16.
Yeah. So while I congratulate the Academy for doing something, I'm still very cynical, and skeptical of how committed they are to actually dealing with the problem. I think if it wasn't thrust in their face that they. And at this level of how thrust in the face it is, Casey Affleck was very thrust in their face. It didn't do shit.
Nope.
But this is like, well, you kind of have to.
Yeah. Well, we talk about this all the time, you know, the right thing for the wrong reasons. You know, how we had talked about when, you know, The Force Awakens came out, you know, and it was led by a woman and a black man. Like, you know, the fact that like, that was obviously like studio calculation of trying to seem more diverse.
Right.
You know, John, you spoke about that at length, and I don't think you're necessarily wrong, but we still got a movie led by a woman and a black man, and it was fucking awesome. You know, so I mean, if it's the right thing for the wrong reasons, at least it's some kind of change. But I think that the hypocrisy of Hollywood just can't stop itself.
I just kind of view this as the red ribbon AIDS thing of you know 2018.
Well, because like as a last quick point. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Well, it just comes down to how important is this person? Like, unfortunately, if they still have a lot of money to make off of somebody, we just kind of turn a blind eye. Like Johnny Depp. Like Johnny Depp, although his last like 5 films have been kind of like in the toilet in terms of, you know, how much money they made back. Like Johnny's still a bankable star, so we're just going to turn a blind eye to him beating his wife because he's still marketable. Somebody like Bill Cosby, his career was over, so let's make a lesson out of him.
Well, I mean, you know, I think it depends. You know, I think too. Like, lately, I've been really inspired by the younger generation. You know, the Americans that are just about to be able to vote like this year, and I feel like they're just completely done with bullshit across the board, and I find that very inspiring. You know, because there's a lot of hypocrisy in Hollywood still, and the last point that I wanted to do for the news bit is just kind of mention, you know, so Ryan Seacrest was accused recently by his makeup artist, Susie Hardy, of him acting incredibly sexually inappropriate. As John had put it, I think the news thing that you had pulled said that he was grinding his erect penis against her.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And
so
there's no way to like say, oops, I tripped on that one. That's a pretty obvious.
Well, like he was just in his underwear. So like he's rubbing his underpants to junk against somebody. Like, you know, that shit's wrong. But this is interesting. So he has these allegations. E has decided not to pull him from the red carpet coverage that he's done for the past 10 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Seacrest is a bankable star for E. He's not going to be pulled.
Right, but they're still putting him on the red carpet as of the last reports I heard.
Yeah.
But I had heard that a lot of celebrities' publicists have told them not to talk to him. So I'm so curious to see what's going to happen. Are the stars going to ignore him and he's still going to be there? Or is Seacrest going to be in the studio and are they going to put Juliana on the floor on the red carpet?
If I had to take a guess, they'll put Seacrest in the studio.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what, at this point.
Who are you wearing? Well, I'm wearing my Time's Up pin, Ryan.
Yeah, right. Well, because these celebrities have been instructed to completely ignore him, and as much as I want to see that, I don't think that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Like for him to try to talk to people and them to blow him off, like that's the shit I live for.
Will make sure that
like,
they minimize
that he's not
any sort of discomfort that could obviously happen. They won't pull him though.
No, Mel, I think is if he's out there, like he'll interview like Mel Gibson and like a bunch of old Hollywood guys. Like like machismo guys. Like that's who he'll talk to.
I could see that. Like
No,
they'd
he
angle
won't
him
talk
towards
to,
like the older men. I see.
Jordan
what you're saying.
Sparks. When he's going to talk to Mel
Jordan
Gibson.
Sparks. That was random. I liked
Yeah.
it. But yeah, so well, anyway, I'm excited for the Oscars. Like this is super fun for me every year. So, but I hope to see some real meaningful change and not just a bunch of snobby people wearing pins and pretending like everything's fine.
I wish I had your optimism.
I'm trying. These younger people are they're breathing life into me. Watch some of their speeches. It's
I've been
empowering.
watching. They're amazing.
Guys,
These people are awesome.
I would say this news bit's running a little bit long.
Yeah, a
so
little
I'm
bit.
going to say time's up.
Oh.
Dad joke. And let's throw it to the Epicast Network for a little bit of a pluggy plug. Pay those bills, pay those gimmicks, and we'll be right back with an episode about death.
All right, pause. You're enjoying this Epicast Network show, but what are you going to listen to next?
Come over and listen to us, Does This Hold Up podcast.
It's a movie review show where we take films from the past, analyze them, answer the question to does this hold up?
Not really.
Not really, no. We talk about things like Karate Kid. You've all seen it. You love it. But do you remember Mr. Miyagi gets blackout drunk and talks about how many Germans he's killed in the war?
You've seen Goonies. Have you seen Mouth? He's not Mouth because he's loud. Mouth can fit a lot of things in his mouth.
He's terrific at oral.
He's known for how many round things he can juggle with his tongue.
So come over, check out Does This Hold Up whenever you're done with whatever Epicast TV show you're listening to now.
Go to epicastnetwork.com, epicast.tv.
At Does This Hold Up.
And we're back. Those messages from our friends over at the Epicast Network, specifically Does This Hold Up?
No, not one bit.
You didn't let me finish.
I think
You
it
didn't let
holds
me
up.
finish.
I think it holds up.
Check them out and the other podcasts from the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com.
I heard at the Epicast Network, the Cinema Psycho show's on there, and I heard that if you tell 5 friends and tell them to tell 5 friends and tell them to tell 5, before you know it, we will rule the world.
Oh, see, no, I thought if
Really?
you told 5 friends and they told 5 friends that you would get a message from your crush before midnight.
Yes, this
And
is
I
true.
also heard that if you say Candyman into a mirror 3 times, that he shows up.
And then we narrate what he's doing.
Well, he kills you.
Oh, well, we narrate your death.
Death. You see that?
You got
see
a
that?
transition.
Boom.
Yes.
People died.
People
my
die.
Oh my God. Okay. So yes, death in the middle of a Hollywood production. What does it mean? Where does the production go? There's a lot to talk about here. It's morbid, but it's also very fascinating.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah, so...
John, you're kind of going to be our guide of the dead in Hollywood.
our guide of the murdered.
Welcome, I will be your guide to the coalition macabre as we enter the dark underbelly of Hollywood's Golden Road. Okay.
Dear God.
Yeah, so before we kind of break down how we feel about this and just the philosophical bent to all this, I think we should just do a little bit of a quick history on a few examples of when this happened. There are some that are kind of obvious, maybe some that you forgot about. I just wanted to we're kind of do these in chronological order. If one came out 5 years before the other, sue me.
Well, I wrote down the years of the examples I thought were interesting,
right.
so I'll have the year for everything.
But so the first one, because it's so horrible that I just had to share.
Well, I did want to ask you one thing. I think this
Yeah.
is a good preface for this. Yeah. When you guys hear that a actor in a movie died, what is the first thing that goes through your head?
I think about their family because I'm a sap. I'm
Oh,
always like,
God.
oh, they're dead.
You know what I mean?
That's so sad.
You make me feel like a horrible person. I'm like, did they finish production?
And I'm a terrible person too, because that's what I think of too.
Well, I think about their family first, and then I think about is it right for the film to go on? Because in some instances it's not, and a lot of times you'll see in these examples, the studios halted production to talk to the family.
Well, I remember I was having a horrible day, and we were still in Edinburgh, where the winter's horrible, and I got stuck in my mom's driveway.
Oh my
And
God,
you
your
told
car
me
was so stuck.
that Heath Ledger had died, and I didn't know if they had finished filming. For night.
I know exactly where I was when the news of Heath Ledger's death happened.
Yeah, you were changing the pill bottles, you son of a bitch. I knew it. I knew it was you.
It was winter.
You and Mary Kate Olsen.
Shut up.
It was winter of 2008.
I was at Robert Morris at the time, and I was getting lunch at the
oh wow, it was early in the day.
It was early in the day, and they had TVs all over the place, and I saw it. I'm like, holy shit! And here's the funny thing: I was wearing my Joker shirt.
No, that's wild.
Because I had gotten it a couple months prior.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. Like, and I'm sorry. The first thing I did think of was, did he finish filming The Dark Knight?
Well, too, I mean, like, it's a natural reaction to have because, too, like, a famous actor, no matter how famous, is just one element of a production. And you think like, oh my God, did these people's hard work like go for nothing? Like if they do end up stopping the film, like that doesn't seem fair to the other people that worked on the film either, you know, but.
Well, you know, and we are diverging again. That's going to be the key buzzword.
You know, we like each other and this is interesting. So whatever.
What's interesting is obviously nobody really knew just how iconic Heath Ledger's performance was going to be. So if they hadn't finished and they recast and reshot the whole thing, we would have never known. But take somebody like Carrie Fisher, who dies between 8 and 9 of the Star Wars films. You can't really recast her. There would be a riot. You know what I mean?
It just wouldn't make any sense.
Well, it's more difficult when the person has already done the role to try to replace them after that.
Well, of course. I mean, those instances are pretty rare, though.
There are some cases where a person gets recast just because of personal issues. Like the actress that played Jennifer in the first Back to the Future didn't come back for the second one. And I'll tell you, 6-year-old me didn't notice.
No,
you had no idea. You didn't realize until you were 12, right?
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Why did Jennifer get to be such a bad actress?
Aww.
Sorry, Elizabeth Shue. You were amazing in leaving Las Vegas. I'll leave you on that one.
Yeah.
So just to kind of give a little brief historici here.
Historici?
It sounds like a fancy operation.
Okay.
On this. So I start with this one. It was one of the first occurrences of it. A silent film star who died a horrendous death in the middle of a production. Martha Mansfield. It was a situation where she was in an automobile in a highly flammable outfit that she was wearing for this film based on the Civil War. When somebody in a car going the other way threw the match out of their window.
What?
And it caught her dress on fire, and she slowly burned to death in the back of the car, unable to get out.
That's horrifying.
Don't you love the good old days of safety in Hollywood? Here, let's put you in a flammable outfit.
Yeah. That you
in a car with gasoline
will melt off of your face.
And there's people smoking, but don't worry, because it was back in the days when people were like smoking cigars all over the time, and they were working with nitrate film.
Yeah,
so it's like you're just asking for shit to happen at that point.
So let's say she wasn't silent then. I'm sure.
Oh, John,
that's mean.
Show some humanity. Damn
my God, that's
okay.
Mean.
Nobody knows.
That's rough.
But and they were able to finish that because they were just able to kind of.
So the silent film era, I mean, that was like early 1900s, then, right?
Well, it was the early 20s.
Yeah, the early 20s. Yeah.
And they were able to finish the film just kind of by recutting it. But moving on to things that we all know a little bit more about here. Now, Elaine, probably one of the most iconic people of all time, Marilyn Monroe, died in the making of Something's Got to Give.
Yeah, this is
probably by the Kennedys.
Yeah, right. Because there's some questions
probably.
there too. Now, this is actually a pretty fascinating story. So Marilyn Monroe died at the age of 36, and she was in the middle of the production Something's Got to Give. Now, I think it's very interesting to note, and maybe this is early to note this, but a lot of these actor deaths that we are going to reference, now a few are accidents and a few had nothing to do with it, but so many of these deaths are drugs.
Yeah.
Whether it was an accidental overdose, an actual, like intentional overdose, suicide or whatever. I think that's really just an important note to make here, just because it's so sad. So the whole deal with Marilyn Monroe, she was in the middle of filming Something's Got to Give in 62, and she had to have her gallbladder removed prior to production, and she'd had several bouts of sinusitis. So this production already had problems even before she had passed away. And she'd been working with the studio, but she kept, calling the director and saying, like, I'm not coming to set today. And it got to the point where her reliability was so in question that they rescheduled the shooting, like, around her scenes, and they went forward with the movie, like, without her.
I've seen clips from this, too, and she can't remember her lines. And was it Dean Martin was the other
I don't think it was Dean Martin.
But it was somebody, and you could tell that he was getting frustrated, but everybody was being very patient with her because she's pretty.
Yeah, well, that's
So,
part of the problem, because she was already reaching like the limits of everyone's tolerance and patience at this point. So she was actually fired from this film.
Wow.
Eventually, and then the role was offered to a couple of other actresses, and I think one of them was Shirley MacLaine, but they both turned it down. And so when they finally were moving forward with production,
so they were going to recast completely.
They were going to recast completely anyway. Wow. And so, but then I think it was one of her coworkers said he wouldn't finish the film without her. So it was weird. Like the studio kind of doubled down on her awfulness, and they were like, okay, we're going to not only put up with you for the rest of this film, we're going to pay you more money, but your contract includes 2 more films now. So like she had to give the studio 2 more films. She was originally being paid like $100,000 for the role, which in the 60s was like stupid money. They upped her pay to $500,000 a picture. And then she would have had to do 2 films after this one for the studio.
So it's like, we know you have a problem, but here, let's throw more money at you and give you more work.
And that's when they
there was
rehired
probably
her.
something in her contract. She had to go to Club Med, you know what I mean, and clean out a little bit.
That wasn't part of things. They just said like, no, seriously, you have to come to the set now. And then this is that famous infamous, I guess you should say, scene where she's skinny dipping, and they had given her like a body sock to wear, but she was like, nah, brah, and she just wore like the nude bottoms with it, and that was when she did that photo shoot afterward, where she was like wearing the bottoms in some of the pictures, and some of them she's not. She's naked. So what happened with this production is that it just, after she died, they just couldn't do anything with it, and they completely shelved it. They did show a little bit of the footage from the film in a documentary in 1963. It was about the film, not necessarily her. And then there was another documentary about this film that aired in 1990. They showed like extensive footage in that one. And then I
think I saw that stuff where isn't there like footage of her slurring her speech?
Probably. I mean,
and that's what I was talking about earlier.
That's the stuff I remember.
She can't remember her lines. She's just out of it on set.
And then there was another Maryland documentary that aired in 1999. And then they did air a big Maryland documentary on June 1st, 2001, which would have been her 75th birthday.
Wow.
So yeah, that was an interesting kind of situation, just because the production was so tumultuous even before she passed away. And that was right when she had done the Happy Birthday, Mr. President thing. And she had been given...
Bitch, my family's here. What are you doing?
And she had been given leave from the production to go to the White House and do that. But many people, like producers who were working on the film, like thought she was way too sick, and she probably would cancel on them too.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that D was at hand.
That performance gave me a boner.
Wow. So that one's interesting just
Bobby,
because...
quit whacking it.
That's interesting just because of the way that the
can I
studio
watch?
setup had kind of like...
Yeah, can I watch?
Just because of the way that the studio setup had kind of made her deal. But then, and then the subsequent film that she had been supposed to do, I apologize, I can't remember what it was called, but I know Shirley MacLaine ended up taking that role too. Wow. So there were other actresses, and it was interesting to think like that they were contemporaries, because Shirley MacLaine, I mean, I mostly know her as like an older lady, you know what I mean? And she's fantastic and I love her, but I don't, it's so funny when you die young, that's all you're remembered for. But like, I don't really, I only recently as like a young adult figured out what Shirley MacLaine looked like when she was young, or like Angela Lansbury or Betty White. These women have the privilege to live to old age, and that's how you remember them. But like, you never see Marilyn Monroe, obviously, because she never got older.
Well, and thankfully I don't think we have any like kids listening to this, but if you're triggered by suicide attempts, please don't misunderstand what I'm going to say here. But there is a lot of mythos to dying young and leaving a beautiful corpse. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe. Obviously,
but it's a misguided notion, because suicide is
right.
absolutely never the answer.
No.
Yeah. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But it does make you an icon because you're forever cemented and remember that.
Again, we've talked about bad decisions in Hollywood. This is another one of them. Hollywood tends to glamorize suicide, and that's never how it actually is.
Right.
If that's anything that anyone's ever thinking about, you need to tell someone you trust and you need to get help. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Elaine. On that one, because I don't want that to be misunderstood.
No, and I understand where you're coming from, and it is a Hollywood convention, but it's incorrect. That's the big part of it. So, then what else do you have?
What else you got
well,
on
interestingly enough, Brian, do you want to talk about Bela Lugosi and Plan 9? Bela.
Okay, so Bela Lugosi had in my opinion, a tumultuous life towards the end of his life.
Nobody gives two shits about Bella.
He had basically gone from being one of the biggest stars in Hollywood with, Dracula, being his kind of breakout role, and then doing a lot of the Universal monster movies to some extent. And towards the 50s, he really had become addicted to heroin. I believe it was heroin.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was morphine.
And heroin. And he was one of the first celebrities to actually go to rehab. Interesting note.
I didn't know that. That's
he was one of the first celebrities to publicly go to rehab.
That's crazy.
Well, yeah, because it was like, he went to the loony bin. That's how they saw it.
That's what they saw it back then.
Holy shit.
But he was one of the first ones to actually go to rehab. But what's interesting about it is his final film is Plan 9 from Outer Space. By far the granddaddy of all bad movies.
And we all love it, right?
And we all
that's
love
clear.
Plan
We all
9.
love that movie.
We might just might look at that sometime
Maybe.
in the future.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Planting those seeds.
But what's interesting about Plan 9 from Outer Space is Bella had nothing to do with Plan 9 from Outer Space. Absolutely not a thing. They had shot that film and they had made that film after he had passed away. Yeah. So what had happened?
He got some B-roll of Bella, right?
Yeah. So Ed Wood,
pronouns.
Ed Wood,
yeah.
Pronouns. Pal.
Ed Wood, the director of Plan 9 from Outer Space, also subject of the very popular Tim Burton film, was friends with Bela Lugosi. Some people believe that he used Bela Lugosi's kind of, trusting nature at the time because he wanted work and things like that, and abused it. Like if you talk to some people who were alive at that time,
Ed was not as nice as he appeared in the Burton.
And they made him very nice, but in reality, like if you talk to Bela Lugosi's son, for instance, I know he hates Ed Wood.
Oh wow,
with a passion.
Okay.
But basically, he was working with Wood on a number of film ideas that never really got off the ground. Like he was working on a movie called The Tomb of the Vampire and the Ghoul Goes West. And in these instances, Ed had shot just basic footage of, Bella in his Dracula costume, mourning and leaving his house and, things that didn't really fit with Plan 9. But he used these pieces of footage, basically as bait for the funding and getting actors for Plan 9 from Outer Space, because he marketed it as, this is Bela Lugosi's final film. So that's kind of what it's a really slimy thing. I have an appreciation for Ed Wood as a filmmaker, but at the same time, I know that what he's doing is really,
that's a shitty thing to do. That's
swarthy shit. So yeah, he used this footage. It was shelved, and he had written Grave Robbers from Outer Space, which eventually became Plan 9. And he, as I said, he used that footage to get actors like Malia Nurmi, who, is Vampira. He also got Gregory Walcott. But the problem was he had his footage, but he didn't know how to incorporate it in the final film. So what he ended up doing, this is really amazing, is he got one of the very first fake shemps. And I know, John, you know what a fake shemp is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, do you want to explain what a fake shemp is?
Are you talking about Three Stooges here?
Kind of.
Yeah.
What would you say a fake shemp is?
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of Curly Joe. In terms of, just getting you... When Curly died on the Three Stooges, they got another fat, bald guy.
Yes.
And they named him Curly Joe. They didn't try to suggest he was curly, but he did some of the similar things.
He did
just so they could
weird,
put on a poster.
weird things.
When you're 5 years old, you maybe don't recognize the difference, and you want to go to the theater because that's how you saw the Three Stooges things back then, and to see and be like, wait a minute, that's not Curly. It's like the Simpsons episode. Wait a minute, this isn't you. That's the original Sparkle.
Yeah. So what Wood did was he actually got his wife's chiropractor, Kathy Wood's chiropractor, Tom Mason, who looked nothing at all like Bella. He was tall, he was bald, and what they ended up doing was they just had, his head covered by the cape and put a wig on him and said, oh yeah, that's Bella.
It could be literally anyone.
It could be anyone. And so in the movie, you see the ghoul, as he's credited, coming out of the cemetery and then interspliced with shots of Bela Lugosi, and it's supposed to be marketed as, oh yeah, that's him, but it's clearly not. And, it did work. I mean, people do consider Bela Lugosi's final film.
I mean, this is in such poor taste.
It is in really poor taste.
Because like that B-roll that was shot, like technically had nothing to do with the movie. That B-roll could have been shot 10 years earlier. He could have bought the rights to that footage and still called it his last film ever.
Yes.
So,
but I think it's just interesting to see how would, basically use Bela Lugosi's death to his advantage to market his movie, which ultimately did become, what he's known for. Plan 9 is his baby. It's what everyone knows Ed Wood for.
It's true. That's true. So, so I guess from here, what do we go to Natalie Wood, guys?
Yeah.
That's a very, and now there's
interesting developments about that one.
Yeah. And that's definitely for another podcast because there's a lot of updates about her death. It may not have been an accident as it was previously ruled.
I could have called that one.
But she died during the filming of Brainstorm.
Yep.
She died at 43 in 1981, and she had actually finished principal photography. But what was interesting about her death is that MGM was kind of broke at this time, and they halted production completely after her death. They closed down all the sets, they froze all the sets, they did everything.
So the filming wasn't done; just her part of it was.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was given to understand because her principal photography was complete, but they used it as an excuse to kind of shut shit down. And a lot of people had said that they used her death as an excuse to kind of halt production because they just didn't have any money. So they got involved with their insurance company. And oh damn it, I didn't write it down. It was Lord in London or something really prestigious sounding, Lloyd and something maybe. There was a Lloyd in it, I think. Sorry, that's my.
Wait, this is an insurance thing.
It was kind of an insurance thing because they had somehow gotten their insurance company involved.
It's something along those lines of
Lloyd and something.
A lot of wrestlers have this.
I can't remember. I can't remember what it was called. But anyway, their insurance company got involved. And since MGM didn't have the money to finish production, their insurance company had offered it to a bunch of other studios. And to MGM's surprise, there was a ton of interest generated from the other studios. More so than they could have expected. People were really looking forward to this movie.
Lloyd's of London.
Lloyd's of London. See, I said London was in it. And so what MGM was afraid of is that they would release it to another studio and then it would make a lot of money and MGM would look like assholes for giving it up.
Right.
They'd look like idiots. So what they ended up doing is that they spoke to Lloyd's of London and said look, you're our insurance company. Could you partly put up the rest of the money we need to finish production? And then you would then be a profit recipient, you'd be part of a profit participant. So whatever the movie made, you would earn too. So that's how they ended up doing it. And I guess that they needed just a little bit of a fix. So this production eventually did go on and they ended up just rewriting the script a little bit. And as a lot of these cases tend to go, they used Natalie Wood's younger sister for just a couple of pickup shots.
I've seen Brain Scans, not very good.
What was Brainstorm?
Brainstorm. Yeah, I've seen Brainstorm. It's not very good.
I'm not familiar with it personally.
It's a sci-fi type movie.
And you can tell it's so 80s it hurts me.
It is
you can see from
80s.
the promotional poster.
It's the body heat movie we saw probably, right?
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. But that's the Natalie Wood story. And I think that's an interesting kind of insider look at the studio system and how that works.
So jumping ahead to not just somebody dying, but dying on set and dying because of incompetence, negligence. Yeah.
This is so sad, you guys.
Twilight Zone, the movie, if you're not aware, has 3 separate stories, all really takeoffs on really famous episodes of the Twilight Zone that they wanted to reshoot, with modern money and modern filmmakers. And one of them was John Landis's version of a guy who is, racist and bigoted, and he has to go throughout history and see things from different perspectives, what if I was black during Civil War days, things like that. And there's a scene where the character's in Vietnam and he's rescuing 2 children. And there's explosions going off because it's in the Vietnam War, and a helicopter on set legitimately crashes. That's supposed to be in the background of the shot. It lands on the actors, and the helicopter blades decapitate everyone.
Yeah.
Three people, right?
3 people.
2 children and Vic Morrow, who was, an up-and-coming actor at the time.
Well, he wasn't up-and-coming. He had had success.
Well, he wasn't
decades
like a
prior.
household name.
No, he wasn't a household name, but he had been in the industry for a while. Right. But I think he mostly done TV and some movies, but not really to the extent of other
it got to the point where the heads kind of washed up on shore, and John Landis threw them in a bag and was like, "That's lunch." Like,
oh, that's awful,
really?
John. That's so disgusting.
No, he didn't do that.
Well, no, I mean, he told everybody to go home, but he did bag the heads.
Oh my God, that's awful. That's so gruesome.
Yeah, I've actually. Have you seen the footage?
Yes.
The footage
Multiple times,
is
'cause I'm a weirdo.
is
Why?
extremely.
Why, guys?
It's extremely disturbing to watch because you know this was footage that was shown at the trial, and this is one of the first instances of a director being tried.
Like for being criminally negligent.
Yeah.
There was controlled explosions, and he had been warned that if you have the fireballs go up too high, it might blind the pilots, which it did, and they lost control of the helicopter. And what they've been trained to do is a controlled crash to keep themselves safe. But
was the pilot hurt?
No. Well, I mean
the people inside. Including John Landis. He was inside the helicopter as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Are you sure he was in the helicopter?
I'm looking at the Wikipedia. It says that he was injured, 6 helicopter passengers, including the director, John Landis. So, yeah, he was inside the helicopter.
Okay, because I thought he was on the edge of the water bank. Okay.
No.
My mistake. But, yeah, so they were okay. Like I said, some bumps and bruises, but obviously Vic Morrow and those kids...
Yeah, that's such a shame. That's such a shame. That's a really sad one.
And what's interesting is that, you know, this did produce some safeguards.
This
while
reformed
shooting.
things, right?
This did reform some things because of how traumatic it was, and because of the fact that people saw it. And that's I hate to say that, but when you see horrific things, you know, it's not one of those things that you can say, oh well, it'll never happen again.
Well, it's with the NFL, like, you know. Now I'm drawing a blank on his name, but for the Baltimore Ravens, everybody kind of turned a blind eye to him beating up his wife until there was elevator footage of it. Now we got to get him out of the league.
Ray Lewis, right?
Ray Lewis.
Not Ray Lewis. No,
Sorry,
not Ray Lewis.
Just kidding.
No, Ray Lewis killed somebody and got away with it. But no,
right.
that wasn't him. But, you know, as soon as we saw it, then it became real. You know, it became tangible.
And that footage is disturbing.
It is
like,
extremely
when you're
disturbing.
Confronted with things like this. Like, I think that makes it more real to you. But that one's a really sad
Landis
one.
did get acquitted. But
it is an accident.
It was an accident.
Sure.
It was not.
It was never his intention.
No, it wasn't his intention. He was acquitted of manslaughter, along with the production managers as well.
Oh wow.
But they did settle with the families.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A year later, but I mean, this did really shake up Hollywood. At the time.
Sure.
And I remember watching Twilight Zone, and like I'd seen it a million times, and I never thought of that until I found out about it years later.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Like that particular story that he's in is in my opinion one of the best ones in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's actually a pretty good movie, except Spielberg's horrible one that ruins the whole damn movie.
Which one's his?
When they're like
With the
little kids.
The old people become little
fuck
kids.
that.
Yeah.
Just like proof.
Just proof that he didn't need to be old to be saccharine and sappy.
It's like, let's get Scatman Carruthers and put him in this, because why not?
Arguably the greatest director of all time. Whatever. I don't think so. But arguably. But then you see things like that and like Hook, and you're like, oh, you kind of suck.
Hey, don't besmirch the name of Hook, okay?
Watch it again.
All right,
I have
fellas.
watched it again. It's good.
Who's next up on the Dead roster?
Just we're gonna go by this one real quickly because I just think it's fascinating and really sad. John Candy. He had just finished principal photography on Wagons East, and that night he went to bed and didn't wake up.
He died hours after. It was a heart attack in his sleep, right?
Yeah, they said that's a wrap on you, Mr. Candy, and then he died that night.
And he died at the age of 44, and that was 1994.
Yeah,
crazy.
Which I think probably really put butts in seats for Wagons East, which is really kind of.
It was his last film. I mean, that sucks.
River Phoenix OD'd outside Johnny Depp's Viper Room in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that was the year before. That was 1993 that he had died.
On Halloween.
And he was 23 years old.
Yeah, he was filming Dark Blood, which actually remained unfinished for multiple years.
What, like something like 17 years?
19
Really?
years later.
Oh, yep, 19 years.
They released
I didn't know they released it.
Yeah, I didn't either until
they
today.
Said, we can probably work around this, and they actually wanted to get Joaquin Phoenix to do some voiceover work, but Joaquin refused.
And I don't blame him for that. That's not his responsibility.
Yeah. But they were able to kind of really. It's probably confusing. It's probably one of those things that you're like, wow, I can kind of tell the principal actor died.
Maybe, but yeah,
they still released it
in 2012, right?
Yeah. 19 years after the fact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brian, do you want to talk about probably the most notorious one?
Oh, absolutely.
Even my mom knew about this one.
The Crow.
This one, I remember the news stories that came out about this at the time that it happened. So, one of the most notorious and honestly unfortunate deaths while making a movie is, of course, the one everybody knows, which is Brandon Lee's death in The Crow. Okay. Brandon Lee, son of Bruce Lee. This was basically his movie that was going to catapult him to stardom. I think a lot of people, after seeing the final film, believe that, yeah, if he had lived and this had come out, it would have shot him way out of making martial art movies, which is what he was doing prior. Mm-hmm. You know, he was making kind of like
his old man.
Yeah, he was making basically martial art B movies.
Right.
You know, late 80s, early 90s type movies that were honestly pretty terrible. But this was a departure from that. So just to give you kind of a quick synopsis of how he passed away, they were shooting a scene in which his character gets shot. The scene is one of the flashbacks in the beginning, and it's where Brandon Lee's character, Eric Draven, comes into the apartment and finds that his fiancée, Shelley, is getting, beat up and raped by a number of the villains in the movie. And he gets shot. Now, what had happened, and this was honestly, kind of displayed throughout the entire production, was a ability of the studio to cut corners on safety and costs. So what actually happened was they had done a previous scene in which they had shown a prop bullet. Okay. So the normal idea is that you purchase these dummy bullets that look realistic, but they do not have any sort of primer or gunpowder in them.
Blanks, right?
They're not blanks.
They're not blanks.
Because they're not designed to fire. They're just designed to look realistic.
Okay.
And you can make these pretty easily.
Well, that's the problem. That is exactly the problem, is that they did make them. If they had bought them commercially and spent the money, they wouldn't have had this issue. But what they did was they had cut corners by saying, hey, we're not going to go commercially buy these fake bullets that don't have primers and don't have anything like that, and we're going to make them. So they went and they bought real bullets. Okay? They bought real bullets, and they had not the pyrotechnic technician do this. They had another crew member from the props department basically remove the gunpowder and primer from the bullets to make these dummy rounds.
Bad idea.
Yes, extremely bad idea, because what had happened was the crew member had removed the gunpowder from the dummy round, but not removed the primer. So the actual firing cap on these bullets.
Even if you have, these are still technically live rounds.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is that. Okay. And what they had done was they had done the shot, they had him put the actual bullet in the gun and fired it, and it went off. But here's what happened. And this is something I didn't know until actually doing the research on this. The bullet did leave the chamber and go into the actual muzzle of the gun.
Shit.
Okay. So because there was enough explosion, enough propellant to make the bullet leave the chamber and get lodged in the barrel, no one noticed this. Okay. So no one noticed this. It was lodged in the barrel of the gun. They had then brought in the blanks, which are all gunpowder, but no projectile. Yes, and you're seeing exactly what's happening.
1 is going to equal 2 here.
So you've got a lodged bullet in the barrel of the gun. Mm-hmm. You've got enough gunpowder to simulate an explosion, and exactly what happened is what happened. Michael Massey, I believe his name is.
Yeah, poor motherfucker had that to live with the rest of his life.
He still to this day has never seen the movie. He refuses to see the movie.
Yeah. I wouldn't blame him.
He took a year off from acting and then pretty much just kind of never did anything else after this because it was so traumatizing.
Yeah, that's the worst thing that can probably happen to a person that they have to.
So what ended up happening is they went and they did the shot, and unfortunately he was shot in the abdomen.
Yeah.
And a lot of people believe that the footage that you see on the film is from that, and it's not.
No, they couldn't
that's
legally show that.
It is hard to watch. Like, even watching it now, since I know exactly what scenes, it's difficult to see that. But basically what had happened was, he had passed away, and they still had a lot of the film to finish. Mm-hmm. So, they ultimately did destroy the undeveloped negatives of that scene. There, contrary to popular belief, there isn't some deleted footage you can find of this.
No.
It doesn't exist. It's been destroyed, and no one should see it, honestly.
No.
But the way that they went about, not necessarily fixing, but finishing the film, was revolutionary for the time. So, you had talked about Natalie Wood, how they brought in like stunt doubles or her sister
in that case
to try to replace it. And this is one of the first instances of actually using computer generated images, which we're going to talk about later, to finish a film. So I looked this up. At the time that this had happened, this was
Brian, not just that, because obviously you're going to go into some detail here, so I want to give you some time.
That's cool.
They also did a lot of old-fashioned things, like behind the shoulder of an actor that has the same height of him. They did a little silhouetted shots.
They did a little bit, but what's interesting is that they combined the old school tricks of, okay, we're just going to get a double in here, but they combined it with some CG. So the company that did it was a company called DreamQuest, and they did about 52 different CG shots for the film, and that you involved Brandon Lee, and it took at the time 500 to 650 hours.
Jesus.
Of doing this, but they incorporated things that now are kind of commonplace. So they did traveling mats, for instance. They did a lot of superimpositions of his face. So they digitally cropped his face onto a silhouetted image. And you can see this kind of in scenes where his character is falling out of the window. Okay. Like, that's one I know I see all the time. I'm just like, that's a digital one there. Sure. And also in scenes where he enters the apartment. That whole section there is all basically pulled from another scene.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is like, don't forget, this is like around 93, 94. This isn't that, whoa, were able to do those effects back then. Like, this is right when Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 were coming out. And as a matter of fact, the scene at the end of Jurassic Park when they're going through the ventilation ducts and the velociraptors like knock the one of the the things out, and Lex is falling. The stunt double for Lex looks up at the camera, and they digitally replaced that stunt double actress with the actress that plays Lex. Like, so they were doing that. Now, granted, that's a heck of a lot easier for about 3 seconds or less of a shot than to do this many scenes for The Crow.
Well, and two, I mean, like, what you're getting into with a special effects heavy Spielberg film. Like, The Crow had to do these effects after the fact and didn't have the budget, I'm sure, to support a lot of it.
I mean, they came up with a budget. I mean, they knew
they figured it out.
They did, and I like to think that if they shelved this movie, it would really hurt Brandon Lee's legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they did finish it.
They all knew that this movie would be the movie that makes him a star. And, I believe that. It's one of my favorite films. And not the sequels. Not going to talk about those because those are terrible.
I remember one day in graduate school how I said I wasn't a big fan, and your face just dropped, and I thought you were about to strangle me.
There are a lot of times I've done that. But, yeah, I mean, it's a couple times. But, so it's just an interesting story. It did lead to a lot of safety reforms for Hollywood as it pertains to firearms. Nowadays, I mean, it's they don't fuck around with that sort of shit. You always have to have a gunsmith or someone who's licensed in this stuff.
That's what makes this one and the Twilight Zone so sad, is that these were so preventable.
Yeah,
if they had just followed regulations. And were we talking about this recently? Where and it's been kind of going around and around on the internet lately, but regulations are written in blood. Like, regulations on any kind of dangerous situation, they're there because somebody died before when they didn't follow them. So I
we just talked about what happened on Kill Bill,
right?
Episode 2,
or
whatever, or
absolutely,
2 or whatever,
absolutely. So
so speaking of using modern cutting edge technology to help somebody finish a movie, Lane, I'm going to kind of lump them together here, but Paul Walker and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah,
Paul
yeah.
Walker,
Well, let me
Furious
talk about
95.
Paul Walker if you don't mind, because this is fascinating in its like technology aspect. So Paul Walker died at the age of 40 in 2013. Hold on a second.
For Four Fast Furious Drift.
My notes are here. Yep, it was a car accident in 2000. I couldn't remember if it was 13 or 12. But yeah, in 2013, he died at the age of 40. He was in an accident leaving a charity event, and they ruled the speed that he was going and the tire age, like the age of his tires, was the cause of the crash. He was one of the few people, no drugs or alcohol was in his system when he died. I thought that was interesting. Just the fact that he was going so fast. And it's interesting, his daughter actually sued the Porsche company because there were some manufacturer defects that were present in the Porsche GT that he was driving. And then the other guy who was in the car with him, God, it's just so sad. They just were both like burned beyond recognition. They both burned to death, basically. But the other family had sued Porsche as well,
like Martha Mansfield,
and Porsche, they settled with the families like separately, but it was ruled in favor of them, like they weren't found to be at fault. But Universal called a hiatus on the film because they wanted to speak with his family and kind of go about it the right way. The director was devastated when Paul died, and he said that he really wanted to finish the film for Paul, and dedicate the film to him. So when they were able to finally pick back up with production,
I wonder if there's truth to that.
But what else are you supposed to say, John? Like, oh, good, like he was snobby. I don't know. Like, I
don't mean to be mindlessly cynical, but I wonder the studio is like, hey, look, we're going to give you $2 million, but you got to say you're finishing this film in honor of your brother.
I think you're wrong, John, because I don't think that, we're taking into account the relationships you build, because this was a 7-film franchise at this point. Juan had worked with Paul Walker for years, and they probably were really good friends, and not only did this guy lose his actor, he lost his friend. I'm sure he was devastated. And he wanted to dedicate the film to Paul. So they actually hired Peter Jackson's digital house, Weta Digital. Is that it? WETA, Weta, is that how you say it?
I believe so.
But they hired them, and they had a really hard time at first trying to figure this out, because they were trying to build a composite of Paul Walker from scratch. And then finally what happened is that Paul Walker's brothers, Caleb and Cody, were able to be used as stand-ins, and they looked so much like Paul, and they walked like him and had similar body types to Paul, that all Weta had to do at this point was reconstruct his face. So they would take like similar...
All they had to do. It's so crazy to say that.
Oh, it's crazy. But I mean, they ended up finding like similar shots from either like from outtakes or from previous footage, from the other 7 films. Right. They found like the footage, and what they would do is that they would have one of the brothers sit in, and his one brother, I mean, they could be twins. It's uncanny. But they'll have him sit, they had him sit in, and then they would find the footage like from a similar shot, and then they would digitally relight it to fit the new scene, and then composite his face on his brother's body. Wow. I mean that's witchcraft, right? Like, it's crazy. So, but it was interesting because one of the things that we've talked about, just in talking about the episode before we started recording, was we were talking about the uncanny valley and how that's like your brain's ability to tell when something isn't real. And the digital effects artists were saying that the details on Paul Walker were so important, like a certain quirk of his mouth, the stubble of his beard, like they had to put in each stubble hair. Like,
I still don't find it. I still don't find it realistic.
Well, I mean, it probably would have been even creepier if they hadn't taken the time to do those details.
Well, I've never seen any of these Furious movies. Any of them.
Any of those car racing
There's
movies.
Like 8 of them now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They've turned to the Avengers now, basically.
Or Fast, the
last
Drift
one.
Furious.
No, the last one, all I know about it is that they turned, what's-his-face, Groot, into a mindless zombie.
Yeah. Oh my God, Batista?
Yeah, no.
Vin Diesel.
Oh.
Vin Diesel. They turned Vin Diesel into like the bad guy. Yeah. They turned him into the bad guy.
Oh yeah, that was
like
weird.
The Rock's in there, and they're like,
the Rock's been there for like 5 of them now.
He's like, we're family, and they're basically kind of like the Avengers.
It's weird.
They've got a compound and all sorts of shit. You're just like, this was about racing.
Ludacris is in there.
Like, why are you doing this? It's supposed to be about fucking racing cars.
Well, one thing I will say is that I really liked that the studio talked to the family first. Not to sully the...
Lane, my point was about not having seen these. I wasn't just being a snob for no reason. But what I have heard through the grapevine is that a lot of characters that would have had no reason to say certain lines in the movie said them because they were supposed to go to Paul Walker.
Oh, that's interesting. So there were some rewrites too.
Yeah, and they kind of worked around it so they didn't have to do too many digital shots. Like all of a sudden Vin Diesel saying a line that would have really have come from Paul Walker, like if you know these movies, and it's just like, oh well, we'll just get away with it, just have Michelle Rodriguez say this instead.
It's true. But it's sad,
Yeah. And it's funny to say that, you bring up the Uncanny Valley kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The first time that was really ever noticed actually was in a Super Bowl commercial. It was like a lot of celebrities, well, unless you count Robert Zemeckis and him doing it with like Forrest Gump and Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, okay.
Because there was a Tales from the Crypt episode where the Crypt Keeper was on a bench with Alfred Hitchcock, and Zemeckis' special effects crew did it because they were just off Forrest Gump.
Oh, that's cool.
But this ad, like, it's funny because if you think, oh, Tarkin in the new Star Wars looks bad, watch that Super Bowl ad because they have like famous people singing in modern commercials. And,
oh yeah,
and
I remember
it's
that.
so bad.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
But it was like one of the first examples of that. But they did some of the similar things here with Philip Seymour Hoffman. And obviously, I kind of want to wrap this part of it up. But one person we didn't mention was Heath Ledger. And just to kind of keep it brief, the filmmaker there was, I believe that was Terry Gilliam, was it correct?
Yeah. It was.
The Imaginary Dr. Parnassus.
Yep.
He
wasn't finished filming that.
No.
Right. And only a small portion of it. And what they did is they decided to honor him by having like a few of his friends, Jude Law, Johnny Depp, and
Colin Farrell.
I was gonna say I was gonna call him Beanie. I couldn't remember.
Beanie?
The smoking beanie. Colin Farrell. Like each do a section, in honor of their friend.
Because they were all real
which
close
makes,
with
I'm sure,
him.
the film very trippy. Like, assuming, let's say there's no video rental store anymore, but say you go on Netflix and you didn't know. You'd be like, why is this guy played by 4 different people? It's probably baffling if you don't know the background.
They did digital effects to a certain degree to kind of come up with this new concept that in each like world that Heath Ledger's character enters, he changes appearance.
That's interesting.
He changes appearance, and the filming that he had done was like him in the real world, and so they kept his appearance the same in those scenes, but anytime he goes to a different world, like his appearance changes.
All right.
So, and that's kind of beautiful that his friends came to do it. Like, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So, guys, I will present this question to you: should a production continue, and under what circumstances should it? Should it, and should it not?
I think that if a film is almost complete, I think it's appropriate. I think it's great, when the studios check with the family, because that's really the people that need to deal with the immediacy of the aftermath of a death like that. But like I had said before, even a very famous actor, a production is more than just that one person. And a lot of people would have put a lot of hard work into something like that at that point. And I think if you can do it in a way that honors the actor and doesn't exploit their death and doesn't make your film more popular because they died, I think if you handle it with dignity and grace, I think it's appropriate.
Here's where I think there's a difference. Is somebody like ODs, like in their trailer, now granted they had a disease, but at the end of the day, they made their own choices.
Right.
I mean, I know
that's not really how addiction works.
Right. But
we'll go with it anyway.
That say something like The Crow, and and Brian, it's interesting what you had to say there about it actually honoring him. Like, his death was the fault of the production.
Yeah.
And I think it's somewhat in poor taste, not just The Crow, but any movie, to finish the movie
when the film is what killed him.
Is what is responsible for that person's death.
I could see that. I mean, I see where you're coming from.
Because they're going to market the movie with that person that they killed.
You're right. And here's the thing, they did. Before we were watching, we started the show. I pulled up an Entertainment Tonight segment from '94 that discussed the CG, and that clearly is. And then, of course, at the end of it, after John Tesh talks, which is always weird.
Teshy,
he's weird. You get a box office report, and you see The Crow's making $11 million at that time, and it is kind of like, did they just use his death as a marketing ploy to get people to go to see it?
Right, it's like a sensationalist kind of thing,
And I think there is some merit to that. At the same time, I got to think that, what happened to Brandon Lee was a horrible accident, and there absolutely is negligence. I didn't mention this during that section of it, but I mean, there were other things that happened on that set that were just by design negligent. You had issues where Brandon Lee got cut, and they didn't talk about this. You got cut during the production of that movie by Sugar Glass.
Oh, yeah.
In one of the scenes. So there were obvious issues there and safety.
What did somebody say to him? about.
John Polito.
Yeah.
John Polito made a remark and said, this was after he got cut by the sugar glass. He said, "Hey, don't pull a Vic Morrow on us." Because this was only maybe...
That's so messed up.
Yeah, this was only maybe about maybe 10 years removed from...
I think it was kind of a callous way to say it, but I think he meant like...
Don't die.
Don't die.
Well, yeah.
It's a shitty way to phrase it, but I don't think he meant it in like a snarky.
No, he didn't mean it in a snarky. It just was a matter of... This was still fresh in their minds. The Twilight Zone was maybe... what did that movie come out? Like 83? So this was maybe about 10 years removed from that.
But like, why weren't you more careful? Like, why wasn't the production more careful when we'd already had this precedent?
Bottom line.
So gross.
I mean, I hate to say it, but that's really it. Really keep in mind, this was a comic book movie at a time when comic book movies weren't really popular. This was 93.
That's true.
Okay. So I have
83, a decade removed.
Yeah, I have to believe that there's a bit of both. I mean, I'm more in line to say, hey, what would the actor want? What would the victim want?
I could
would
see
they
that.
want their work shelved, or would they want it out?
Yeah.
I tend to think, at least with Brandon Lee, that he would have wanted his work out. Now, he would really want him to not be dead, too.
Oh, my God.
But I have to think that he would want the work, the idea that this particular project would have been the thing that got him his career off the ground and really immortalized him. And I tend to believe that it would have. But at the same time, the studio is responsible. But we were talking, a couple weeks back about Sarah Jones' death on Midnight Rider.
Yeah.
Where that production was absolutely responsible.
Negligent.
And that movie will never see the light of day.
And that's, I think, like in that case, especially too in the more modern era when we should know more than better about that sort of thing. Like, I think that's very, very appropriate.
Even Back to the Future 2, like I was reading a book on that because I'm obsessed with the Back to the Future franchise. And they said the scene where in the future Hill Valley, when Griff and his goons go flying through the glass planes of the clock tower, which is also the courthouse, they almost died. Like,
really?
2 out of them almost died. Like,
really? Why? What happened?
The stunt doubles of the goons like almost died. I think they missed crash mats, and like the glass wasn't the right type of glass, and nearly cut their carotid arteries.
Oh my God,
they
that's
like fell on
awful.
their necks because they like the projectile like. They were supposed to like land, like tuck and roll and land on their backs on these crash mats. Not only did they miss the crash mats, but I think they landed like on their necks.
Jesus,
God,
you know,
that's awful. That's
so
awful.
yeah, there's all kinds of
there's different
negligence
situations.
on films. But
you know?
let me propose the question, you guys: when would you just halt production and just stop the movie? Like, when would you say this is unacceptable to finish this movie?
I mean, I think if the production was the reason that the death occurred.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Crow. Crow was the reason.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that they should have finished that movie. You know, I mean, I know it's like one of your favorites. And I don't want to take anything from you, but I don't know that one should have been finished. And
what about the Twilight Zone movie?
I don't know if that should
he's
have
only
been
one
finished.
part of it. John Landis was only one part of that film.
So you repackage. I mean, you take John Landis's part out of it. I think.
I
know that's
did
extreme.
you replace Landis?
Maybe. I think it's extreme, but I mean, you know, if it's the production's fault, then I know that in most cases they have finished it, but I think it's kind of gross.
I think ultimately it has to be up to the victims' families, in my opinion. I think it really is up to them.
It's their. I mean, I think it's their
I think
choice,
at that point
you know?
it's up to them. It's what they would want.
And if they're okay with it, then move forward. But
that's the way I look at it.
I agree.
It's really it has to be up to the victims' families. In the case of Sarah Jones, you know, that whole production was nothing but a clusterfuck of safety issues. So, you know, that movie should never see the light of day.
Yeah. No, I agree because it was completely unnecessary and they were completely at fault, you know?
So what do you guys think of, you know, using CG for somebody like Paul Walker or Phyllis Seymour Hoffman? Is it the wonders of modern technology or is it creepy soul stealing?
I think it's creepy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's creepy.
I think it's a necessary evil. I mean, you know, you can't always rewrite in all these circumstances. And I mean, a lot of these productions got lucky where there was a sibling at hand to help.
Well, like the Hunger Games, for example, they were into the third film. You can't just replace Philip
Right,
Seymour Hoffman.
exactly.
He needed to finish like 75% of his shooting. So you almost are forced to digitally replace his face.
Again, it's another, it's
I
another
never saw the last Hunger
situation.
Games movie, so
it was not great. It was another, and the
Well,
first
part
one's really
two.
good.
Well, I should say the fourth one technically, because
Yeah.
the last one.
Right.
But I think, again, you have a greater responsibility to the overall franchise. I mean, all these people who put in all this work, and it's a situation where, the production wasn't at fault, but, it's just a tool that we can use now, to kind of get through these unfortunate circumstances. Because, I mean, these are rare. I mean, these examples that we've used are really rare. This doesn't happen that much, like during production. Like more often it's after they've finished principal photography, but too, I mean, a lot of times actors, when they do pass away, aren't involved in anything at all. So it's not necessarily that big of a deal. But when you have like a legacy, of several films and other people that have worked on them, I think it is a bit macabre. But I mean, the problem that I have with it is that when they brought Peter Cushing back from the dead, there was no reason to do that. You didn't have to do that. That was silly. You could have just cast another actor that looked like him,
or
like a young him.
Or
they want you to. Sorry, they want you to watch these movies chronologically.
Well, that sucks for them because
and they
it's
want
weird.
Like a young kid to see Rogue One and then see A New Hope, and it's the exact same thing. It's just a natural
But it's not.
flow.
I mean, they tried to do young Carrie Fisher, and that doesn't look right either.
Here's the thing. With Rogue One, there was no need to have Tarkin in that.
Right. You didn't need it.
There was no need. Seriously, the movie has nothing to do with him. Okay? You could have very easily had a shot where, maybe Tarkin's ship comes on, comes to the Death Star at the end of it. And there you go. Boom. There you go.
It could,
that's his thing.
Or
you may
another
fire when ready.
or another dignitary or like underling of the Empire could have been like, Tarkin is here. Like, I mean, they could have done a lot of his dialogue through commanding.
I just felt like that was kind of like look at my fancy new toy.
Look
I'm gonna
at
try
what
it.
we can do. Yeah.
Well, what would you guys think about the end of the movie? They're like, we have it. We have the plans for the Death Star, and it's over behind the back, over the shoulder, and it's a white hood, and it goes down, and you just see the hair buns.
That would have been fine. I would have wanted that so much.
You don't need anything more than that.
So
you didn't
much
need to
more.
see her
'Cause
creepy face,
and it would have been a real fucking actress that looked real, and there would have been no.
I'm sorry,
You don't need to see her
It
creepy
didn't look
face.
right.
Am I the only person who sat there in the theater just going like, "What the fuck
No,
did
it
they
was-
do to her
It was
face?"
fucking creepy. I didn't like it either. I think it was a mistake.
What would you guys say to if the studio said that to some degree you basically are giving up your face and your likeness and your voice?
That's a whole new show. Like, we could do a whole show.
They
on the
tried doing that with Back to the
ramifications
Future
of
Part 2. You know that. They tried doing that. They sued Crispin Glover
Crispin Glover, yeah.
over his face.
Well,
Yeah.
he sued them actually.
Oh, yeah.
They
Well,
just
yeah,
went
he
ahead
sued
with
them.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
too, I mean, like with the likeness of Dracula, I mean, didn't Bela Lugosi's family go after Universal as well for continuing
They
to
did.
use his likeness? I mean, that court case is a huge one. I mean, like, we could do a whole episode. I mean, we've talked about this before. Yeah. But, it's just one of the things that when an actor dies, we have new resources now where we don't just have to do stunt tricks,
Now, we're a film podcast, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do think we should touch a little bit on how this differently affects television.
Sure. And I have a couple of good examples because there are different issues at hand, I think. So a really strong example from 2013 would be the death of Corey Monteith, who died of an overdose. Now, he had previously been in rehab, but when he was getting better and he was in rehab, he had talked to the producers and he had said, look, like, I really want to be in more of next season. I'm getting better and I want to work more next season. So what really sucked about this is the season where he died over the summer, but they, I don't know that. I think this was the first episode they came back with.
Yeah.
It's called The Quarterback, and it's where they address the character's death. So they had him die on the show as well. And that's normally what happens in the research that I've done. Like, if an actor dies on a TV show, he's usually died in the when he dies in real life, he's died on the show.
And you have to address this more head on because it's episodic television. It's not like in a movie where, there's 10 more minutes, we'll just figure it out.
Well, and specifically in this case, like when Corey had been in rehab and asked to be in the show more, the showrunners had written more Corey his character Finn. They had written more Finn-centric episodes because of Corey's request. So not only did this affect, the single episode where they had to write about his death, they ended up redoing like character arcs and like story arcs for the whole season. They had to rewrite everything.
Hey, watch
So-
those flailing arms there.
Sorry, I'm gesticulating.
She's getting
so-
excited.
Trying to punch
So that
me
was
here.
one of the things that I thought was interesting because not only did it change, this one episode, it changed the whole season.
Right.
So, so the episode's called The Quarterback. Corey Monteith died on July 13th of 2013, and this episode aired on October 10th of 2013. And one of the things that this episode was critiqued for is that they refused to say how he died. They didn't say it was a car accident. They didn't say how he died, which I think was kind of a mistake because he died of a drug overdose in real life. And so
I think it's important maybe to bring that up.
What do you assume? I think you would assume that Finn died of the same thing if you didn't know any better. And I don't think that, you have the power to direct the story, direct the story. And I think, raising awareness about drug abuse and everything is important. I don't know that you needed to make that the reason that Finn died when it's out of his character, but just put him in a car accident or something, give people at least a reason. But one of the things I thought was the most interesting about this is that most of the episode is comprised of just first takes, even if they didn't get it right, because the crew and the cast were crying so hard, they really couldn't get through shooting it. It was really difficult. And a lot of cast members who weren't even supposed to be in it asked specifically to be in this episode because they wanted to honor their friend. And one of the actors had said that it was so difficult for them because while not every character in the show was affected by the death of Finn, every actor on the show was affected by the death of their friend Corey. So that was one of the things. I mean, it was mostly pretty well received by critics because it was just a heartbreaking
What show
episode.
is this?
Glee. Oh my
Okay,
God, I didn't
Glee.
even say that. Glee.
No.
Yeah, the show Glee. So it was a heartbreaking episode all around, but the critiques it got was just, for saying not how he died. So
And this happened with Cheers with Coach and
Yep.
John Ritter on 8 Rules for Dating My Teenage. Is that
It was 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter, and then after he died, they changed the name of the show to 8 Simple Rules. I thought that was interesting, that they changed the whole thing of the show. Now, they said his character died at the grocery store. John Ritter actually fell ill during a rehearsal and died a few hours later. He had an undiagnosed heart defect, and he died of aortic dissection, which is when your aorta tears itself apart.
Wow.
I can't think of a more
Jesus.
painful way to die. That's probably the top, most painful way to die. He was misdiagnosed with a heart attack, and actually his family sued, and they won because the doctor said it was a heart attack, and it wasn't. But he got a posthumous Emmy nod for his performance. He didn't win it, but he got it.
Wow.
Without fail, at least every other episode, while we're on the TV subject, I managed to sneak in professional wrestling.
Yeah, I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
Owen Hart, does that count?
This is a little bit different because wrestling is a whole different animal. But in 1999, they were running a pay-per-view where Owen Hart was set to come from the ceiling on wires, and the wiring broke, and he fell, hundreds of feet, smashed his head on the turnbuckle, landed in the ring, and he was set to come down, so I think he was basically just kind of floating there waiting to be dropped. And they cut to a backstage promo for his opponent. He was like, oh, I'm going to kick the blue, because he's playing the Blue Blazers. I'm going to kick the Blue Blazers ass. They come back, and all the cameras are on the crowd.
Yeah.
They had turned the cameras around, and you hear...
Well, he died on live television.
Yeah, wrestling, even though everybody over the age of 4 knows it's a work, and they don't try to pretend it's not a work, that it's pre-scripted and predetermined, that they basically... What they never do is, Jim Ross, who was the announcer, saying that something really tragic has happened. This isn't part of the show. This isn't scripted. Owen Hart fell. We're checking on him right now. I cannot stress this enough. This is not part of the show. This wrestling
He died instantly, though,
is
right?
scripted. This is not part of our scripted program tonight. No, he did not die.
Did you watch that
Really?
pay-per-view?
He died slowly in the ring.
Did you? Because
no.
I watched the scrambled version.
Yeah.
Guys.
You're probably like, what the fuck?
No, back in the analog days, pay-per-view was always scrambled.
Yeah.
But you could always hear the audio.
Oh,
So
that's right. You
I
told
was
me that
hearing the
before.
audio, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And because I was watching wrestling at the same time you were, and I watched the Raw after the day after that
The Owen
happened.
Hart tribute
The Owen
episode,
Hart
yeah.
tribute episode, yeah.
And the thing is, wrestling has been known sometimes to blur the lines of reality, because fans oh, was that real? Was that supposed to be real? They call them in wrestling carny codes shoots, which is actually where somebody does break character and break the storyline, and work shoot, where it's scripted to make it look like it's real.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there were some people that thought this was a work shoot, because you never saw Owen fall, and they're like, oh, this is just in poor taste, but they probably thought it was part of some kind of storyline,
Sure.
But McMahon basically rallied his troops in the back and said, if you don't want to wrestle, you don't have to. But we've made a decision to finish the show. if you don't want to go out, I'm not going to hold it against you. You're still going to get your pay-per-view pay. You're not going to be punished.
Yeah.
I understand if you don't want to go out there. I think everybody did, and they finished the show. There are a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions. A lot of people said, oh, the fans might have rioted. If they just canceled the show, the pay-per-view in the middle of the thing, they would have also, it's kind of a sleazy reason, but they would have to have refunded everybody on the pay-per-view purchases and
true.
all the house. They would have to give them all the ticket things
yeah.
back, and that would have cost them multiple millions of dollars. But what do you guys make of finishing the show after Owen Hart fell to his death?
I don't know how anybody did it because, I'm not even half the wrestling fan you are, and every time someone brings up Owen Hart, I just want to cry. It's just so fucking sad.
Well,
I don't think they should have finished the show.
Yeah, I don't either.
I really do. Maybe it's because it is a live event.
Yeah.
It is something that it's happening in real time in front of you, and then you have to I don't know how any of those performers were able to get into that ring knowing that their friend a couple minutes ago had died.
And he was
Owen
so
was one of the most
popular.
beloved ones.
Yeah, he was
exactly.
so beloved.
I don't know how you could do that.
Well, here's the messed up part is Jeff Jarrett, who was his tag team partner, one of his closer friends, had just cut a promo practically in tears because he was doing it live right before he went out. And the thing is, they cut to his music, and he is standing backstage in what they call the gorilla position, where Vince McMahon is on headset, and he's waiting to go through the curtain, and they wheel Owen Hart past him.
Oh, my God.
Dead. And the thing is, then his music's playing, and somebody goes, Jeff, you're on. You got to go out. And Jeff just goes out, and he comes out to the crowd, and he lifts his guitar, and he gets into character, but he just passed Owen Hart's dead body.
Well, and that's the capacity of the
Did they
human
show
brain.
that on the?
No,
the
the thing is, apparently WWE has under a safe lock and key. There is footage of him falling to his death, but there was never anything aired on pay per view in any way, shape, or
Because
form.
of the delay, right?
Now they had multiple cameras that were recording at the same time, so there is footage of him falling, but only WWE has ever seen it.
That's crazy. Wow. Well, too, didn't his family sue to have it destroyed?
No, they sued that for McMahon never to use Owen Hart's likeness.
And that's
Never.
fair. I think that they lost that right when they had
they
a
got it
stunt
back.
go
It
bad.
took multiple years because they were in a lot of litigation.
Yeah.
But they didn't want. I'm sure even Vince McMahon I don't think would stoop this low, but they didn't want him to profit off of the death.
Yeah.
But I think they wanted to profit off of Owen's life.
Yeah.
Down the line, Owen Hart
Yeah.
DVDs and T-shirts and Hall of Fame
But
inductions.
again, Owen died because of the WWF.
Negligence.
Negligence.
Yeah.
He died for that reason, and I feel like you give up your rights at that point. But
although it was proven that it was more the company that did the wiring for him to come down more than it was the company.
But still, he died because he was in that entertainment thing. He didn't die in a car accident. He didn't overdose on drugs. He died at work. It was a work accident. No matter who specifically was at fault. But then by the same token, as the Owen Hart rule, do we count Steve Irwin in this pantheon of dead people as well? Because he died filming his show.
It was actually it was a movie. It was a documentary movie that was going to come out. So it
Yeah.
wasn't a show.
Oh yeah. It was, but it was
And
a
he
movie.
died on your birthday, I think.
He did. He died on my 21st birthday.
Died on your birthday.
Yeah, he died on my 21st birthday. Actually, maybe it was the day before. I don't know why. I feel like it was September 4th. Because
great! It was the day after my birthday.
I know, it was the day between our birthdays, dude. I thought that was interesting.
a couple months after my
That
birthday,
was the year we turned. That was the year we turned 21. Friend, it was like 2006.
Crazy.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be taken into consideration, and I'm not sure that there's one simple answer for any of this. But what's a couple final thoughts for you guys here? as
Don't
we
do
wrap up
drugs.
this? Yeah, that's fair.
No, I think that, just I hope we just see a trend of every responsible production behaving ethically and just making sure this never happens again. Some of these stories are just so sad because the death could have been avoided.
I think we need to keep into consideration that while something like Hollywood movies are such a cash cow, like Star Wars and Marvel movies make well over $1 billion, that even with that kind of money, that you shouldn't sacrifice your dignity as a person when it comes to productions. Don't force a movie just because this is such a monopoly and such a capitalistic venture, that people's lives and your dignity and their dignity matter more than finishing a production. And I hope that movies are made safer in the future, and that you don't compromise somebody's human rights by doing something sleazy in a production.
That's always good advice.
My advice is very simple: keep it safe. That's it.
Definitely.
I'm sorry. There's no excuse to cut corners on safety. You spend whatever amount of money on these actors, you spend whatever amount of money on the crew and everything that goes into making a movie. The last thing that you should never cut corners on is safety. That's it. Right there.
Agreed.
I like to think that people like Vic Morrow, people like Brandon Lee would be alive if the productions that they died in didn't have the let's cut corners on safety mentality.
Yep.
So to any filmmakers that are listening, you make sure that everything that you are doing is safe, that your actors are safe, that your crew is safe, that you are safe. Because these sorts of tragedies shouldn't happen in modern filmmaking. I know we're talking about movies that are maybe 20, 30 years ago, but that's not that long ago, you know? So that's my final thought on it.
Yeah. Oh, you know, there's an old adage in wrestling, like, catch me. Like, you know, the thing is, if I jump over the top rope or I jump, like, you are to catch me. There's a certain level of safety and understanding that that's going to happen. And certain accidents happen, and sometimes you don't. But if you're being careless and you don't catch that person, you're not working in wrestling any longer. You know, because your life is on the line. And that's an adage, obviously, specifically for wrestling, but that's for any type of media.
Right.
Definitely. I think we're all on the same page, guys.
Yep. So, Lane, where can they find you on the Twitters?
You can tweet me at LA_Croft. Talk to me about Hollywood Death. Talk to me about the Oscars. Let's chat.
You can find me at the Unreal J Wolves. I will be live tweeting the Oscars tonight.
Oh yeah, me too.
So,
shit!
Chances are this is going to come out on Monday, probably, isn't it?
No, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to plow through this.
Okay. So
I'll tweet it from the Cinema Psychos account. Then.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And I'll probably put that out on Twitter. So in case you're not listening to this until Monday, I will be live tweeting the Oscars tonight.
Awesome. Okay, you can find me at Brian Carrington and also from the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network at epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw away or talk to us a little bit about people who die in Hollywood, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. And make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Send us a rate, send us a review. Also, be sure to check out our monthly newsletter, Psychos Nation. We just put out a new newsletter for March with some leprechaun deaths to kind of give a hint at what what's to come. We might be doing a leprechaun episode. And catch a new episode available every Sunday.
Rest in peace, Vic.
Epicast.